right, we're on to Mage. The quest line for Mage is Sorcerer's Gambit, 1 cost opening hand, as always with the quests. Quest line, cast a Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell. Reward, draw a spell. Uh, what's good about this is you're drawing a spell that's in your deck. So the cards that were good enough to make your deck, you're getting another one. You're thinning your deck by 1. Um, even if you're just playing a generic, like, let's just say you put this in the existing Spell Mage deck, that deck plays Fire, Frost, and Arcane spells like Brain Freeze and Combustion and Ruined Orb. Um, and then you get to draw another spell. It's paying for itself at that moment. Turn 1 was not something that you were doing anything particularly important. You were just waiting for Incanter's Flow and Deck of Lunacy. Um, this probably replaces Deck of Lunacy in some metagames. Well, we'll talk about where that comes up, but Deck of Lunacy is much more explosive. You get the rewards quicker, aka next turn. But let's talk about some of the implications. The first questline reward, draw a spell, and then you get Stall for Time. Cast a Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell. Reward, discover one. Now, I originally thought that it would be discover one of the 3 that you just cast, and I think that would have been better. But discover one lets you find other options. Potentially, you get something better. You might get something like Evocation that you might not put in your deck, or maybe you do, but it allows you to get some end game, or it might find you the card that you need right now. It's a good effect. Discover a spell is something that goes on a 3-cost 1/3 body that is the most popular card in Standard right now. Steward of Scrolls would be more playable if it didn't cost 5. People like this effect. It's a powerful effect. So certainly Stall for Time. The reward is good, but at this point, you've had to cast 2 Fire, 2 Frost, and 2 Arcane spells, and not just 2/2/2. You had to do 1/1/1 and then 1/1/1, which is a little harder to do than you might expect. And even if your deck had 8 of each of them, right, and filling up 24 cards, it's still like, did you get the right ones in the right order? I can't cast Flurry if there's no creatures in play. I probably can't cast any of my ice spells if there's no creatures in play. So maybe my quest just fizzles out in the matchup where it's best, which is against control decks, because I can't cast my frost spells. Or maybe I need to target my own guys. Doable, but potentially tough. This is a tough quest to finish. The final quest line, cast a Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell. Reward, gain Arcanist, Dawn Grasp. The 5-cost 7/7 battle cry. For the rest of the game, you have spell damage +3. The reason I say this could replace Deck of Lunacy is because your primary win condition for this deck was always burn. And gaining spell damage +3 is bonkers. It's very hard to get this, though. That's 9 spells taken 3 at a time of specific types that may not be the ones that you wanted to cast. So this is not the sort of quest that you are trying to churn through. This is the sort of quest that if you're building a control deck, has to be a control deck, you are turning your control elements, being the burn spells that you're already playing, into eventual win conditions, because Ruined Orb now becomes 5 damage to the face. We'll talk about one of the cards that's coming up with Ignite. Definitely becomes a win condition as you slowly churn through your deck. This is, I recommend to you, do not put this in your deck with the intent of churning through it, so much as saying, I want to have 6 copies of each of these spell types to make sure that I can get them, at least 4, if I have some draw effects, and slowly allow the quest to manifest. Just like we talked about with the final confrontation from Demon Hunter. It might just be a card that you put in and let it slowly pay off for you, right? Draw a spell. That's a fine reward on the first card. You don't need to go through the rest of it. It does give your deck a win condition for all of the elements that you're already playing. And then Ignite's going to give you that redundancy for the end. So this card is playable. It is 100% a build-around card. You want to have tons of other spells in your deck, and you must have at least, I'm going to say at least 4 copies of each of the other types, possibly plus other ways to discover spells to help you pick and choose the kinds that you want. So very, very hard questline to finish. But in a mage deck, it is giving you that inevitability for the late game. The question is whether or not you're going to actually need it based on how good Ignite is, and we'll get to that in a second. All right, the first mage non-quest card is Hot Streak. This card is very good. 0 cost, fire spell, importantly. Your next fire spell this turn costs 2 less. If we're going back and looking at it through the lens of the quest, you can use Hot Streak to potentially flip the quest, and then you get another fire spell that starts churning through the next part. That said, like I mentioned, it's very hard to like churn through this quest, and I don't think it's particularly good if you're doing that. Um, I'm more excited about this card with all the interactions in a Fire Mage deck. There's 2 avenues to take this. For one, it can be Grand Finale on turn 6. That is already a big deal because if you're playing Confection Cyclone, which is the card that I think is the most underrated in all of Standard right now, that card's great. It's a 2-cost 3/2 that makes 2 1/2s, and if you're playing it on turn 5 or turn 4 and just vomiting out creatures, suddenly you're threatening to play 4 8/8s on the next turn. Now that Hot Streak exists, sometimes you're just going to use it for more reach. We're going to see a card later with Chandler that lets you churn through your deck. It's a 0 cost spell that potentially makes another 0 cost spell for Gadgets and Auctioneer. So there's a lot of implications for this card that are tempo based, value based. You do give up a card to do the effect, but as we've seen every other time that this card has existed in Hearthstone, cost reduction is really good. And probably the baseline of this card is already very strong, and it has some really broken possibilities. The quest, which we're giving 2 stars in constructed, and 0 obviously in arena. Hot Streak in arena, again, garbage. You're never going to want to play this. In constructed, this is probably the most important card in that deck and can build other decks. So I'm going to give Hot Streak 3 stars. There's a lot of potential. The bigger the card pool, the more this card can do. And already we've seen from the theory crafting decks that when you get Chandler in play, Hot Streak, draw a card, Ignite, draw a card. It helps you fuel through the end of your deck and gives you these really game-breaking end game scenarios. So, very exciting card. All right, another exciting card, although a little bit of a meme. 8 cost 6/6, Grand Magus Antonidas. Just like in the style of the old Antonidas, you're throwing fireballs everywhere. Battlecry, if you've cast a fire spell on each of your last 3 turns, cast 3 fireballs at random enemies. A lot of times your fire spells on the other turns are going to clear the board, like Flame Strike and Fire Sail, or Combustion. So often this card is looking at a fairly empty board. It's definitely exciting as a potential finisher in the style of old Alexstrasza. This is probably going to hit 18 to the face in a lot of situations, or 6 to kill 1 creature and 12 to the face, which makes it a very effective way to take your control deck and chunk your opponent in a way that's meaningful to allow you to get that last bit of reach. Presumably, if you've completed the quest, these fireballs should get spell damage, and that makes them hit for 9, which 27 damage out of nowhere is game breaking. You know, you obviously win the game. You probably win the game with the last 2 mana with whatever other spell you have. You do have to jump through a lot of hoops. You have to spend a lot of time doing it. That said, I think the fire spells are definitely the way to go. I don't think the quest is that important. Apart from Brain Freeze and maybe Ice Barrier, I'm not excited about playing Frost cards. Arcane cards are fine. Runed Orb would be great for a quest like that, but most of the time I think I'd just rather have fire spells for this deck and play fire control because of the other cards we're going to see. And having this one card that deals a significant chunk is really the big payoff for having a deck full of fire spells. Ignite. This is the most important card that Mages got, and it fits basically in every deck. there doesn't really seem to be an aggressive aggro mage deck currently, but Ignite gives you reach, and as games get longer, which is normally where your aggro deck fizzles out, Ignite lets you reach through for the end of those games. So we'll talk about those implications. But 2 cost fire spell, importantly, deal 2 damage, shuffle and ignite into your deck that deals 1 more damage. The fact that it shuffles into your deck means that you win fatigue battles. Period. Apart from it getting blown out of your deck by a warlock, this card will guarantee that you are going to survive through fatigue. Every turn that you're just drawing it, when it means it's getting better and better and better and better and better. You're just definitely going to win all situations where that comes up. That's very important. We'll see if that's good enough compared to the priest that eventually is going to draw 10 cost to win the game. But Mage, having access to this card, probably wins every late game. It also, while not being a good card early, is a card that you're happy to use as a removal spell on a 3/2 or a 4/2, or just whatever's left in tandem with your hero power or something that helps a combustion deal more damage. This card shines in the mid to late game when you start getting the extra copies. And like we said, Auctioneer and Chandler are 2 cards that are going to let you essentially end the game immediately with 1 Ignite. That being said, maybe you only need the 1 Ignite in your deck, but because of the existence of Warlock that might try to burn it away, you probably put 2 in your deck, and then whichever one is bigger is the one you're just always going to cast. Excuse me. It might be the sort of card that you just put 1 in, but it's the most important card in your deck in tons of matchups. I don't think it goes in every deck immediately because it is overcosted for its initial effect. You're not getting payoff until the 3rd cast, which probably doesn't happen until later. Because you only need the 1, I'm tempted to only put 1 card in my deck, but if Warlock is prevalent with Altar Fire and with Ticketus, then I'll put 2 in and just try to hoard it and save it for the fatigue situation. This card's going to be absolutely game-breaking. Not quite a 4-star card, but definitely the most important card in the decks where it's good. Ignite is just a fantastic strong card. 3 stars for Mage. In Arena, also playable. It's again overcosted for its 1st and 2nd effect. You're generally not getting into fatigue in Arena, so you'd fall behind if you put too many of these in your deck, or even if you put this in your deck, period. It gets 2 stars because you're fine to play it, but you're not going to take it over creatures that will actually help you get ahead in the game and not need the end game of Ignite. Alright, next we have Clumsy Courier. Battlecry. 7 cost 4/5. Battlecry casts the highest cost spell from your hand. Like I mentioned earlier, Grand Finale needed some ways to come out earlier. You have a certain power fire to come out quicker. Now you also have Clumsy Courier, so you might have 4 cards in your deck now that let you play Power of Fire 1 or 2 turns earlier. This is a very big deal. You could also have Flame Strike that comes out, 7 cost 4/5 that also casts through your opponent's creatures. You're almost definitely playing Clumsy Courier in a deck that has Primordial Protector to give you redundancy on getting those cards in play and online. For that reason, it's only going to be a 2-star card because it's a role player in a deck that would need to put a lot of pieces in play. If this card is good, it's going to be great, and it'll be a pivotal 4/5 body that also lets you wipe your opponent's board. Could be reminiscent of what Jace Darkweaver does in Demon Hunter. But that said, you're only casting the 1 Flame Strike, maybe. You need to have it in hand. You need this to have stayed in your hand through an environment that has Mutanus. Or if you're getting Grand Finale, you wanted to play Confection Cyclone or Steward of Scrolls the turn before to get a 4/5 and 2 8/8s, for example. That'd be a great turn 7. But it's a role player. So 2 stars. Pretty exciting to build around. In Arena, Mage does have access to more spells, and more spells that are good. But that pool just got a little bit worse with the fire spells in this set that you don't really want to put it in your deck in Arena. So whereas it had a lot of gas in the last expansion, unless the sets that they're pairing us with give really good top-end mage spells, you're probably not putting this in your deck. Um, you would need to already have two game-breaking spells like Flame Strikes in your deck to take this card. So I'm going to give it a 1-star. It's at best something that has niche playability. All right, this card though is great. Fire Sale, 4-cost fire spell, tradable, deal 3 damage to all minions. When this card is good, it's great. When this card is bad, it's okay, because you can trade it away. Trading it away, for example, let's say you're playing a quest line deck. We're always going to go back to the quest and see if things work. Let's say you're stuck. You've played fire already, and you just need one arcane spell or one frost spell to get to the next stage. Well, you can go find it, especially in the matchups where Fire Sale's not good against control, for example. You say, all right, churn through my other cards. Or at worst, you can say, I play Fire Sale as the first turn that helps me set up for my Grand Magus Antonidas. So this card is going to help you play board control. It is definitely a spell-based control deck. Ignite is going to be the finisher in this deck. The question is whether or not you're playing the quest, but Fire Sale is going to be always great. It's even, of cards like it, it is the best one that's ever been printed for Arena, because all of those cards that deal equal damage back and forth, they're either too expensive and the board parity is not worth it. Twisting Nether is probably the best one of the cards like it. All the other ones that deal damage both ways, it's hurting you too much. It's hard to stay ahead on the board when all your creatures, even if they survive, they're still going to die to the next 2-3 that your opponent plays. In this case, if you're just way behind on board, you can chip your 2-3 or whatever into their 4-5 and then play Fire Sale, wipe their board, and then you still have some mana left over to play something. And if it's not good, trade it away. All the tradable cards are going to be at least, I'm going to say probably all of them at least 3 stars in Arena, just because of how good their flexibility is. This card, 3-star, it's a very important card. It's going to show up in a couple different decks. For Mage, it might even replace Flame Strike in some decks, and again, tradable makes it never bad. This card, however, can sometimes be very bad. Celestial Ink set, 2-cost, 2 durability weapon with no power. After you spend 5 mana on spells, reduce the cost of a spell in your hand by 5. Lose 1 durability. So you get this effect twice. You need to play this card, which means it's not a spell that you're playing. Best case scenario, you're playing a 2-cost spell and a 3-cost spell to reduce a 5-cost spell. That's the earliest you can get this effect out is turn 4. You might get an extra, like a Pexus Blast, for example. The nut draws certainly give me some thought. Maybe there's some place for this, but it's a lot of hoops to jump through, and you don't want it to hit your Runed Orb or your even Cram Session, for example. It's just like you're not getting the benefit of reducing 5. It feels really bad. You spent a card to reduce something else by 2. That's not good EV. It only hits the one card. If it hit something like Deep Freeze or Grand Finale, then sure, like, yeah, you can do a lot of good things, but is your deck really just 5-cost, let's say 4-cost spells and up? Probably not. I think it's a lot of hoops to jump through. It's a lot of work for not much effect. It could find a home as a role player in some sort of combo deck, but that leaves it at a 1-star card. In Arena, this card is completely unplayable. Just don't pick it. All right, the all-star, or maybe, the most important card for mages in the set, along with Ignite, and certainly Ignite's best friend, is Sanctum Chandler. 5-cost, 4/5. It's an elemental, which is important for the Grand Finale synergies. After you cast a fire spell, draw a spell. Best case scenario for this is your deck is empty, you play Sanctum Chandler, you cast Ignite, you cast Hot Streak, you cast Ignite. And your opponent probably dies in that situation. This card helps you churn through your deck. The existence of this card and the existence of Ignite makes it me think that fire, and more fire is the way to go, because fire works. All right. use fire, maybe with an elemental synergy, maybe with Grand Finale. But I think fire is the way to go. I don't think you really care about the quest because Ignite's going to win you the game with this card. Between this and Gadgetson Auctioneer, you're casting Ignite 3 times at 10 mana on an empty deck. Also, you can just play this card. It's not a horrible body, and you can help your deck churn through some of the other cards, or find combo pieces, or find the Grand Finale, for example, or find Grand Magus Antonidas. You can just play this, play Hot Streak, play Ignite, and say, all right, I drew 2 more cards. Next turn, they probably had to deal with this. If you ever get to untap with it, you probably win. They have to answer it. And even on the turn you play it, it's good, and it has combo finishes. This card is great. It's a build-around card. 3 stars. In Arena, you're probably not getting that many fire spells. I wish this card were good. The body's fine, so I'm going to give it 2 stars because it's never a dead card. You're happy to take it and put it in your deck, and if you saw it early, then you might be happy to take other fire spells and say, hey, I can get some extra value off of these. Next card, Prestor's Pyromancer, 2-cost 2/3 Battlecry. Your next fire spell has spell damage +2. Notably, not your next fire spell this turn, your next fire spell. So, in your fire control deck, you just get to play this. And you play it on curve, you play it on turn 2, and it helps you fight for board early. And then your big spell, the one that you're looking for a payoff, let's say it's Combustion. It's probably the most common synergy that you're going to get. Pyromancer into Combustion. Combustion deals 6. That's going to wipe the board. That interaction alone makes this card good. The fact that you can play Pyromancer now, and then play whatever fire control spells you need down the road is what is going to make it strong. It's totally the type of creature that you want to put in a control deck. A on curve 2-cost 2/3 that gives you some effect later is you're just ecstatic to play this. You don't even need to play around it like a Sethic in Priest. You can just drop this, fight for board, and then use your fire spells later. In the cases where you're playing against aggro and the 2/3 gets outclassed, great. You've got First Flame, you've got Combustion, and you've got Fire Sale to help you just wipe the board. This card's great. It's getting 3 stars. Well, I'll say 2 stars because it's a role player. It's not the card that you're building around, more so the card that you're putting into the deck that you've already building around. It's not carrying games by itself, but it is an auto include, I think, in your fire control decks. In Arena, it's a 2-cost 2/3. You're happy to play it, so it gets 2 stars by default. You're probably not getting much effect out of the spell damage +2. This card, however, is great in Arena and in Standard. First Flame, 1-cost fire spell, deal 2 damage to a minion, add a second flame to your hand, which again is just a copy of this spell. This card's great. Just like the Demon Hunter spell that deals 2 then deals 2 for 2 mana, you essentially get to do that with First Flame. Important distinction, this cannot go face, but you can cast it on turn 1 when you're on the draw, and then again on turn 2. It can be buffed. It's a very easy way to help Antonidas go off, because you can play First Flame on one turn, First Flame on another turn, whatever other fire spell you need on the next turn, and then Antonidas. So this card has a lot of great uses. You're auto-include into your fire control deck. You're happy to play it. You're not really building around it. But that said, this card also just goes in aggro decks to help you fight for board. It helps you. It goes in the existing Spell Mage deck as a way to fight for board on multiple turns. It's super effective. I'm giving this card three stars because you're gonna put it in just about all of your mage decks. Very rare situations where it's not good. If it's against control, you still might use it to proc your Chandler to draw 2 cards. You can deal 4 damage with First Flame and Second Flame to cycle through and draw 2 new cards. You've gotten rid of your dead card against control, and you've drawn 2 new exciting cards, maybe even more ignites. In Arena, this card is 3 stars. You are happy to put this in your deck. You should be looking to pick it if you see it. Premium creatures will be better, but the ability to trade up twice or to control a board early is paramount. It's a very, very good card in that situation. And that does it for Mage. Fire Mage. It's all about the Fire Mage. I don't think the quest line's very good. The Fire Mage cards are very good. Hot Streak's broken. Ignite is great. Chandler is great. Fire Sale is fantastic. First Flame's fantastic. What's not to love? You've got 5 really strong synergies for a Fire Mage that could already have been almost good enough. You know, it's definitely good in an environment with creatures where you're able to fire off all the creatures. I think it got a lot of tools. This deck looks good. It got a win condition that you can count on that even wins through fatigue wars. So even the warrior deck won't be able to just sit back on their laurels and gain armor all game. Will eventually burn them out. So Mage got a lot of redundancy, and that was important for this class. You're never going to have the best creatures, but your spells you're always going to have the most flexible spells for damaging, for burning your opponents, and now you definitely have really good tools at every stage of the game.